my name is Daphne Marcelle Lee. I'm a professional dancer living and working in New York City. My current occupation is I work for Disney Theatrical Group by the way of The Lion King on Broadway. Prior to that, I was a former ballet dancer with Dance Theater of Harlem. I also worked for a company called Collage Dance Collective in Memphis, Tennessee. And I also was a member of Alvin Ailey 2, which is the junior company to Alvin Ailey American Dance Theater. I went to school in Rahway. I went to Madison Elementary School,
Huh.
Rahway Middle School at the time, and then graduated 2009 from Rahway High School. So I did the whole Broadway circuit, and then of course went to college in New York City for dance, majored in dance, got my master's in dance, and this is how I ended up pretty much here.
Okay, so the first question that I have is, what does it mean to you to come from Rahway, and how has growing up here shaped who you are today?
So the funny thing about that question was you don't think anything about where you're from. You're just like, unless it's like a major city like Vegas or London or New York. So I didn't think anything of being from Rahway. It was just a place that my parents had settled. Both my parents are immigrants. My father's from Panama and my mother's from London with Caribbean descent. So I'm just like, okay, this is just where they decided to plot. It wasn't until I got much older and I got selected to be one of Rahway's own that I actually saw the connection to Rahway. I had no idea about Tesla, and some of the many others that were featured that Rahway had such prominent people. So I honestly didn't think anything of it until much later in my life. And now looking back, you see, oh, there's a lot of people who went through this town, who started here and then decided to disperse out. While you're in that moment, you don't really think of it. You don't really think too much of, okay, where you're going, so to speak. But I will say, looking back at it now, it's been amazing to share with others that, yes, I'm in this direction now and I came from this town. So I think I appreciate it more and it's more special knowing that I'm from here. And a lot of it is credit given to the educators of this town. They really supported me. They really focused on, okay, she's going to be a dancer. This is really awesome. This is what that means. And it never was anything weird. It was really like, oh, we have artists here, we have scientists here, we have mathematicians, we have sports. So that was something I really appreciated about coming from Broadway.
Yeah, that's really insightful. I think, especially coming from such a small town, it's interesting to see where people end up, and even just considering like, wow, I am from a really small town. It's not something
Mhm.
that you consider with your identity, but when you get into these really big places, that's when you really start to
And
be
you
like, wait a minute.
realize,
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I
yeah,
love I love what you said about the teachers playing a role. That's such an understated situation. A lot of
yes.
people don't think about that, but when I was growing up, it was you can't be an artist, don't try. It's not
Mhm.
even worth it. So having people behind you and backing you is great.
No, from every stage, from Miss, this woman obviously had passed, but Miss Burns from my kindergarten to Miss Kravenko in middle school to, oh my gosh, Mr. Mobley. You had so many people, of course, Allison Dooley in the high school, all my teachers, my math teacher, Mr. Esposito. There's a whole list of teachers that were just very prominent in how they treated us as students. So that's something that never went away. But I definitely can say, in addition to my own mother, of course, the teachers at Rahway, the whole system were very, very supportive of all the things. I never
It's great.
felt I wasn't told I couldn't do anything. And even if that was the case, I wouldn't have listened. Because my own mother was my own example. So I'm like, well, my mom's an artist. She made it. She was cool.
Right.
But yeah, of course, on the outside, I had to deal with a lot of that. Like, oh, people to this day, they're like, oh, you're on Lion King. Do you have another job? And I'm like, no, I don't. This is it. This is a full time
Right.
401k insurance. Is I've never had to do any other jobs as a dancer.
Right.
Knock on wood. So
Which is good. You shouldn't have to.
you shouldn't have to. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot that goes into that, and it's things that we don't even know that you are
Right.
involved
Right.
in, and all the behind the
Right.
scenes,
Right.
and it's
Yeah.
definitely a lot.
Hmm.
And if this was 1950s, it'd be a little different. This would be a
Right.
hobby, but this is not the case anymore in 2025. You can make a real sustained living.
Right, and all those shows are sold out, right? Like they
They're
they
they're pretty
pack
much
out those.
sold out.
Hmm.
Yes.
That's
Knock on
amazing.
wood. And of course, Broadway is one of those things, you know, you open a show, it may close, but you know, the goal is to keep it open. But of course, Lion King, it's the gift that keeps on giving, as we say, and it's 27 years in. So hopefully
Wow.
it continues to keep going.
Yeah, I was gonna say 27 years that I saw it when it was opening.
Right. I was a little kid when it opened, so
Yep.
it's crazy. Yeah.
Definitely a classic.
Excellent.
Yes. So you basically already answered the next question. It was about specific mentors and teachers and experiences at the school that encouraged you or shaped who you are today and pursued your dreams. Was there any, I know you kind of touched on a little bit of pushback on from some individuals, but was there anything specific that stood out to you, or maybe a specific circumstance that pushed you back, or even just encouraged you to be like, this is my dream and I want to go pursue
Not
it?
really, because I had no intention of being a dancer. It wasn't until I turned 18 that I said, oh, maybe I'll try it and see what happens. My
Oh, wow.
intention was to become a doctor because that's what all first generation Americans think of. This company is all about capitalism and money. So growing up in America, you see that everyone has, you know, the house, the 2.5 kids, the picket fence. So you automatically get, you know, infused into that. um, I didn't really think so much about that until, again, college. So the pushback was really just students and just people that really had no idea about the dance world. Again, we live in America. The arts are not as heavily sponsored as they are in other countries. In other countries like Europe, for example, dance is a part of the government. So you're
Mhm.
treated differently.
Right.
In Russia, if you become a ballet dancer, your whole family is paid for.
Right.
But in this country, you know, we focus on sports because of the contract that comes with it. But it's exactly the same thing in my field. I have to work 10 times harder. I have to do all the things, all the training. People pay tickets to come see basketball players. It's the same with a Broadway show. But again, they're getting millions, and we're not getting millions, but we make a
Right.
decent wage. So again, the construct is more so this country and the concept of we know nothing about dance. Even my own family told his own kids, "Oh, you're not going to make any money dancing. Like, go into something else." Right in front of my face.
Yes.
So it's definitely I get slapped in the face all the time. Even when I see people that come see the show and they're always baffled by, oh wait, like this is what you do for a living. What if you get pregnant? I'm like, you take a maternity leave. What if you do this? There's all sorts of things people don't know, and
Yeah.
it's genuinely not their fault. But how many times did you really get to learn about the arts industry growing up, other than you can paint and you don't really see the connection with arts and long-term goals. Even with me now, everyone's like, well, you can't do Lion King forever. And of course, I said, I don't want to. Um,
Right.
Mhm.
and they're like, well, what can you do? I'm like, almost everybody who works for Disney Theatrical Group were in the show. So my company manager was a former dancer. One of the other different managers in the company also was in the show. So there's a lot of opportunities to become a dance captain, to become resident supervisor, to become a resident choreographer. There's so many jobs, and I have a master's. So if I don't want to do nothing with theatrics, I can work in a university if I want to as a professor, which I've done. So there's so many possibilities. I think we just get sidetracked into thinking, what do you do after that, and what does it look like?
Mhm.
So my biggest pushback has been people.
That's an amazing point, and a lot of people don't talk about that. The culture surrounding careers and the culture surrounding success and what it looks like, and like that's hopefully going to be come through in this project for us, is that success is what your passion makes it,
What you're making,
and,
yeah,
and it's
exactly.
and it's amazing that you've been able to continue to thrive, with that culture being on, and everybody who's a part of what you do, and it's great.
Yes, thank you. That was a phenomenal answer. So so the interviews that we're doing, the vision is to specifically highlight it for Black History Month, and ease our way into Women's History Month, as both of those identities are very important, especially in representation in the arts and media in general. So the next question that I have is, what does Black History Month mean to you personally, and how do you reflect on it in your life and work?
Such an interesting question, especially now in 2025. I'm like, Black History Month now is a great way to continue to spread awareness about Black history, Black culture, and that American culture is Black culture. Um, But it's also weird because being a person of color, you know, we always joke in the community and we're like, we're Black 365. Like Black History Month is
Right.
365. You don't know what
Hmm.
that, you can't differentiate what that means if you're in it. But I will say it's always important to reflect about the contributions that Black people have made. I even saw Misty Copeland, who was the first principal ballerina with American Ballet Theater, do a whole post about Black ballerinas that came before her from 1950, because we're not, again, we're not aware, they weren't showcased, their stories weren't always heard. So it's a great month to kind of reflect on the past and also just adding that connection to what's happening now in the world. So that's what it means to me now. It's a good moment to reflect, even for me, like going back and saying, oh, who are the people that passed away? Who are the people that were recognized? What did they do in their lives coming up? The reason it's easier for me now is because of folks in the past, obviously. So that's been my biggest connection to Black History Month and Women's History Month now, is acknowledging and sharing that information as we speak. In terms of how do I feel about it, I'm in it, so I don't know, because that's all I've ever been. The easiest things I came into this world was female and Black. So that's something that's obviously laid out.
Yes,
Excellent.
definitely. Um, with that, how do you think that your identities play a role with your work and recognizing, you know, that you are now part of this story and the culture that is Black History Month and Women's History Month for even people that come from Rahway or that come to see Lion King?
The beauty about all the steps I've taken in my journey is that I've always deliberately put myself in spaces where there were people of color. So of course, Alvin Ailey American Dance Theater, of course, Collage Dance Collective, quite diverse Dance Theater of Harlem, of course, one of the first Black ballet companies in America to stay established. Wasn't the first officially, but and then of course Lion King, which is a predominantly Black show, where I'm not the token. So I've never been the token. I've had opportunities to work in white spaces, and I have been the token, but that automatically just gave me an easy way to be surrounded by folks with the same intention and the same vision. So I didn't have to worry about skin color. I had to worry about my skill, my
Mhm.
skill set, because everybody was the same. Um, so that being said, that's not to deter anyone from going into other spaces, of course not. But it gave me a little bit of that resilience to understand where I am in this place, my worth in these spaces, and also the history. Long story short, I'm only the fifth woman to take on the cheetah role in The Lion King. That speaks volumes. The woman before me was 15 years in the show. The woman before me was before that. I still get to talk to the original woman who played the cheetah, Lana Gordon, who's still performing in Hadestown and Chicago and all the Broadway shows. You know, I still get to dance at Dance Theater of Harlem for a company class. I still get to see all my former colleagues. I still get to connect with the artistic directors of these major institutions. So that being said, the history of these places are very intertwined, especially with the arts, because we have to stick together in that way. So I get the opportunity to connect with everyone, and I try to share that same opportunity outside of my workforce. So when I'm doing career days at school or I come back to Broadway High School, I still try to share that same energy. And I tell people, you can still DM me, send me a text, to stay connected. When I'm teaching or doing master classes outside of the state or the world, or the country, again, I tell people, come sleep on my couch if you have an audition or if you need tips or whatever it is. So I still try to make myself accessible to folks who want to learn more about the industry, just because we had that opportunity growing up. So that's a big, big, big connection with staying rooted in your community. And that just makes it easier.
And that's excellent.
For sure.
And that's an amazing message to put out. That's, you don't see that a lot once people start getting higher.
It's
Mhm.
harder.
Um, yeah, and so I would just add just one little just fun question. How does it feel now to be part of the story, so to speak? Like, how does it feel personally now to be part of the history of dance, the history of the arts, the history of Lion King, the history of Disney? How does it feel to be where you are?
That's a tough question because I don't feel that way at all. If anything, I feel the
Good.
reverse in many cases. For example, with Dance Theater of Harlem, yes, I was a company member, but I wasn't a star. So for example, in New York City Ballet, you have ranks, you have principal, you have soloist, etc.
Hmm.
Dance Theater of Harlem didn't have any ranking. So for those that got to experience me in the workspace and as an audience member may remember me, but I'm not really in that giant roll call of yes and no in a sense. You know, like
Hmm.
if I die tomorrow, there's not going to be Daphne Lee was the star. That's not gonna happen. I am in pictures and videos. I am in people's memories, but I wasn't really a star when it came to Dance Theater of Harlem. Same thing with Lion King. The thing about being in a Broadway show that's represented by Disney, Disney is focused on its brand as Disney. They're not focused on the individuals.
Hmm.
So again, when I leave Lion King, there's not going to be a plaque that says Daphne
Well,
Lee. You know,
see,
it's not
well,
that.
I will say though that you remember the people before you, and you spoke about the impact that they had. So what I was alluding to was that there are going to be people that come up and
Okay.
they are
Yeah.
going to say, "Wow,
Yes.
Daphne was here. She
Okay.
did
Yeah.
this." Like you're part of that story now, and
Correct.
the
Okay.
story you told us, someone will hopefully one day have your name in it.
That's
So,
that is true. So there is it's weird because especially as a dancer growing up, you're taught to be so humble. You're taught to be like, okay, that's great, cool. But it is something to be said when people, I guess I see it in younger people, when aspiring dancers come to me and be like, oh, I followed your career. And I'm like, what? You know, that's crazy.
there you
I'm just
go.
out here.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't really think too much of it, honestly. Like, honestly speaking, it's just kind of one of those things, like it'll hit later. It'll hit when I
Mhm.
leave. Like it'll hit, same thing with Dance Day of Harlem. I think when I left and then I saw myself as a poster kid, I was like, oh shoot, that is me. Like, you know, there's somebody thinking that, or when new dancers that get into the company start following me because they're like, you were in this company and
Mhm.
like you made me want to join it. So it's those kind of backstories I do connect, and it does feel enlightening to know, like, oh wow, you know, she wasn't your conventional ballet dancer starting from wee bit old and then went through these ranks. She started off in a modern company first and then switched to a ballet company, which is unheard of. And then all of a sudden went to Broadway. Like my goal was to do one of everything. So when you do see dancers and instructors come up to you and talk about that, it is really exciting to hear like, oh, they do know my name and they do kind of, you know, but it's also the flip end of that too, is that Misty Copeland will go down in history, you know, because she was a first. When you're a first or you do something
Mhm.
extraordinary in that sense, you really get locked down. But I think I'm here to talk about, to share the underdog story, because there's so many dancers that go
Yeah.
through this industry, will never get featured, will never get this kind of interview, will never get anything. And it's like they put in just as much work, you know, to also create their own little legacies. But, you know, we're the kind of industry where you may not get recognized by a lot of your own team. So it's half and half. It feels good to be recognized here
Understood.
in Broadway, but I'm also like, you know, I was never featured in Dance Magazine Top 25 to watch. I didn't win a Princess Grace Award. I didn't win a
Right.
Bessie. You know, I don't have no Tony to my name, but it is something to say that people are still seeing you.
Yeah, but I mean, that's the good
Definitely.
thing about art, though, is, it's not, it's about the passion. It's about your not product, but it's about your art. And I think no matter what, there are people who are
That are
seeing and
still, yeah,
looking, and your story means a lot. So that underdog story, that obviously we don't have a platform in Rahway to help tell everyone's story, but
right.
um, it's great to be able to share yours.
Yeah, definitely. And I agree. And, just to add on a little bit, I think also a lot of what you're talking about too is just the challenges of being a woman and also a woman of color, like always undermining your successes because it's like, well, somebody else already did that. And so I think, by you just touching on that and sharing your wisdom and your own experience, I think that's so important because a lot of the times, as a woman myself, I know that when I achieve things, it's like, okay, well, what's next?
What's
What
next?
am I
Yeah.
doing next?
You have to
It's
like
always
settle in it.
next.
Hmm.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
So I'm so happy that we get to, highlight all of your successes and everything that you've done and, your whole journey and things that you will continue to do because, this is definitely not the end. So
No, this
I
is the
have no
start.
idea. I have no idea. It's a
um
moment.
Yeah. And going back to one of your points that you touched on earlier, you talked about tokenism as being a woman of color in an arts field. So, kind of going off of that, what are unique challenges that you have faced as both a minority and a woman in your field, and how have you navigated them?
Um, oh my gosh, the challenges feel so long ago. I
Well, that's a good
don't
thing.
know, I guess my biggest challenge was more personal. It really didn't have that much to do with me being of color or a woman. This is where it gets interesting with me. With others, if we were in Alabama somewhere, it'd be different, right?
Mhm.
But because, New York City was in my own backyard, I'm surrounded by people doing the same thing. So my biggest challenge was more so set up in the genre of the field of dance that I wanted to do. Most people, if you want to become a ballerina, you get into a major institution, you train as a student, you hopefully get an apprenticeship with that company, and then you go straight into the main company, so to speak. You do that for ballet, you do that for modern, you do that. My thing with dance was I wanted to do everything. I wanted to work with Beyonce. I wanted to work in a modern company. I wanted to be in companies that toured around the world. I wanted to do Broadway. I wanted to do a TV show. So my route as a dancer went everywhere. I never fit into one box. So
Mhm.
I was too contemporary to be a prima ballerina, and I was too classical to be a real rugged modern dancer, contemporary dancer. So I never fit in anywhere. So that was my biggest thing. Yeah, were there moments when I went to audition for major institutions, let's say, School of American Ballet, and I was the only Black dancer in the room? Of course. But again, as a person of color, you're trained to know that. So I automatically
Mm.
knew, oh, going into this space, I'm going to be the only Black girl. And I still got in, and I still got in a scholarship. Now you have to think, okay, did I get in because I was a person of color, or did I get in because of my skill? So those are things you kind of always have to toil with. So that's a unique challenge in itself. Um, what else did you mention? You mentioned about being a woman. No, there's a big saying in the ballet world, ballet is woman, quoted by George Balanchine. So no, that wasn't the case. If I was a guy, maybe it'd be a little different, but of course that's changing as we speak. But no, my biggest hurdle was definitely fitting in the boxes that um, dance can kind of make, if you're especially when you're training and you're trying to figure out, where do I fit in as a dancer? Do I fit in here? Do I fit in there? And also, I was really focused on getting into big major companies, historical companies. And yes, I was successful in that, but there's also a beauty about joining smaller companies or being a founding member of a new company. So with my situation, that hits a little bit different in terms of genres, but not so much being of color, because again, I've always been in spaces of color. And that's, excuse me, that's also helped me to push a little further, because I knew everyone's looking for Black ballerinas. I'm gonna just exploit that. So it was always cool to be around
Yeah.
spaces of, we need a Black ballerina, Daphne. We could think, so it kind of worked in my favor, but of course, it was one of those things.
Right. Understood.
Yeah. Thank you for that. Okay. And so our last and final question is, what do you hope people, especially young people from Rahway, learn from your story?
What I hope people will learn from Rahway by looking at my story specifically is that you can make it in the career of an art form. If your parent or guardian is telling you, oh, focus on something else, focus on what you're going to be happy in and what you're passionate about. It may take you 10 years after high school to figure that out. You're not going to figure it out at 15, 16, 17 years old. People in their 30s are still figuring out what they're trying to do, where they're trying to go. Even here, like, yes, I'm
Yeah.
on school, but I don't want to dance forever, so I got to figure it out, right? So I think it's also about doing what makes you happy. When you do what makes you happy, you'll never work a day in your life. And I think that's important. My parents were lucky enough to tell me, if you want to be a garbage man, be the best garbage man out there. If you want to be a stripper, be the best stripper out there. Because their parents restricted what they wanted to do. So they made sure that if we have a kid, we're going to make sure that they're happy doing whatever they decide to do. I wasn't going to be happy being a doctor. I would have been miserable, especially in this country. So I'm happy I went the route I decided to go to. I remember a medical school student telling me, you should dance. You can always be a doctor, but you can't always dance. So I also surrounded myself with people that were doing the thing. and I wanted to make sure I was attracted to those individuals. Last but not least, to students out there, stay focused. It's such a short amount of time that you'll be in school. You have the rest of your lives to do X, Y, and Z. So just use this time to focus and get through the assignments. Yes, it may feel like half that stuff you're not even going to use, and that's all right. But you really want to focus on being in school and being a student. You're never going to be a student again after that. And know that everything that your teachers are telling you are preparing you for the real world. So stick with that, because a lot of the things my teachers said, not the assignments, what they said actually
Right.
still stick to this day. So that would be my biggest advice: is do what you're happy with, connect with teachers that are telling you the real deal, stay focused, and everything is limited amount of time. So really take advantage of what you want to do.
Excellent.
Yeah, that was wonderful. Thank you.
Definitely agree. That time flies by.
That time flies by.
It's
And
Time
you don't get
crazy.
that
flew
time
by.
back.
It's 30
Yeah.
years ago, but yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Flies by.
Um,
And these kids need to
Yeah.
hear that coming from someone who has gone through it already, and someone who's focused as and featured as a Rahway's own, and seeing that it is possible no matter what you look like,
Yeah.
as long as you do what you like to do and you focus on it, like you said, then there's
And it's
no
such
end. You
a
can do whatever you want.
it's a hard concept. It's very hard to think like, wait, will this work out? Will this, it will. It always does, because your intention is set on making it work. So it'll happen.
Right.
It's only when
Mhm.
you have the doubt and the fear and the naysayers, then you lose half that capacity to win. But again, I surrounded myself with, oh, this person made it, I could do it. This person got onto Broadway, I could do it, because it's there. Did I audition 1,000 times? Yes. But
Mhm.
now I'm in a place where, okay, I can chill now, like I can actually relax a little bit. I ain't got to worry about the rent. I ain't got to worry about any of this stuff now, because I know, okay, I'm here and I'm doing it. And I put in a lot of work. But the more you sow, the more you reap. So that is a real life fact. That's not even a myth anymore. Like, you put in the work to whatever it is. And also, I forgot to speak about rejection. Like, the words no to me means next opportunity. So whenever you're told no, it's a beautiful opportunity to pivot, to go in another direction. There were a lot of things I got rejected from and I was mad about, but then bigger things came afterwards. So I'm like, okay, perfect. I auditioned for this Broadway show, that Broadway show, but then I got the Broadway show. And I don't have to worry about it closing anytime soon. So hopefully.
right.
But that has been my experience so far. And it's been just wonderful to share all of this information back to everyone of Broadway.
That's
Thank
excellent.
you.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Is there anything anybody else wants to add?
So
Yes.
I'll just end this off. Thank you so much for taking the time to do this. This is more important than because I've heard
Absolutely.
I've heard what you said. This is very important to us, and I'm hoping it helps people out there. I can speak from experience that when you feel that you're alone,
Right.
you don't push forward, and hearing other
Yeah,
people's stories, you never know how many people it can help. So
it
thank you
can
so
help.
much for that. And then lastly, is there uh, uh, time for your shout outs? Tell people what you're doing, where you are, where to find you. Let them know how to keep track of you.
Absolutely. I'm giving a big, huge shout out to Rahway High School, a big, huge shout out to Rahway Dance Theater, the school that I trained at, run by our Miss Armani, who's doing a fantastic job. Of course, you can always find me as the cheetah in Disney's The Lion King on Broadway, 8 shows a week, which is insane.
Ooh,
Eight
that's all.
shows a week on Broadway. All Broadway shows are 8 shows. That's just the industry. And then, of course, you can find me on social media at Daphne732, mostly on Instagram, Daphne Lee on Facebook, and Daphne7322 on TikTok.
Wonderful.
Thank you
We
so much for
appreciate
taking
that.
this time, and thank you for sharing your story. Anything else?
I actually want to show you a picture that I found on my phone, Daphne, from 2017.
Yes.
Oh,
Okay, that's
goodness.
you.
Yeah, that's
Yes.
literally my
Oh my
freshman
goodness.
year of high school. And I remember
Please
I was
send
So
this to me. Yes. Okay.
so
Yeah.
that's
I know
that's
exactly.
going in
Yes.
the that's going in the video. So
Yes.
that's
That
gotta
connected. That connected